The fights are behind us in the big time welterweight return for former champion Keith Thurman following 2+ years. And it goes down as a strong comeback in the end, a unanimous decision win over Mario Barrios and a PBC on Fox pay-per-view. Welcome in. My name is Brian Campbell, one half of the Morning Combat duo, alongside Luke Thomas, of course, giving you live combat sports magic every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern on the YouTubes. But it's instant analysis time right here for your boy BC. Needed, and I think wanted, but needed as a boxing fan, as a boxing journalist. You wanted to see somebody with the star power of Keith Thurman and the as well-rounded a game as he had in his prime. And this just in seems to still have close enough at age 33. You want him as a big player in this division. His only loss was his last fight 2.5 years ago to Manny Pacquiao in a split decision, a thriller. Keith fought well enough where you could almost make a case for victory, but he'd had some hiccups in his career. This was an extremely long layoff considering he had a 2-year break before 2019 following those 2 big wins in his prime to establish himself against Sean Porter and Danny Garcia as sort of the welterweight of the moment. Well, he became the forgotten welterweight in recent years with the rise of Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford. Injuries, fatherhood, the pandemic, all of these things conspired to keep Thurman out of the ring. But he was back in Las Vegas. It was a pay-per-view. It had the potential to be an all-action affair because of Mario Barrios' dog inside of him and the Aztec Warriors want to really prove his greatness. Now, he makes his pay-per-view debut last June against Gervonta Davis and looks great at 140 pounds, just being a rugged badass that was hard to get rid of. Now, Davis did stopping him late in that one, but Barrios showed up, and I think he earned himself a big fight. I was surprised to see it come here in his welterweight debut against Thurman, but for him to have big-time success in this fight, it was so tied into the potential narratives of will ring rust, the time off, conspire against Thurman and create a no-shit scenario. There were ways that Thurman could win a close fight here and it be a thriller and both have success, but him just be the faster fighter, the better boxer. It turned out to be that, but in a much wider sense, because Barrios was unable to use the size advantage he had against Gervonta Davis, a division lower, to be the fighter getting off not only first, but as often as he wants, to just be that aggressive fighter to go to the body. And it was Thurman's power and the combination of his speed and boxing IQ. And he did box smartly, defensively responsible. And it was all of that really prevented Barrios from being Barrios. And it's not that he fought awful, but it's a one-sided performance. It's unanimous decision. It's 117-11 on one judge's scorecard, 118-110 on the other two. Same score I had it for CBS Sports, 118-110, which is what, 10 rounds to 2. So Keith Thurman, we knew was this quicker fighter, most definitely. The stronger, the more natural welterweight, and also, with the established power advantage. But it was the expected advantage in just pure boxing ability by Thurman that really won this fight. And he was brilliant in it. And he needed the power, though, to be that bookend to keep Barrios from overplaying his hand and trying to get inside and pushing the pace and maybe hurting Thurman to the body, which did happen. I'll get to that shortly. But, Barrios has to try to, bang on those pipes and try to burst one. And Thurman was just so brilliant at just keeping him away, never really being in range long enough for more than one punch. There were some good rounds in this one that did heat up a bit, and they both had to give and take. But for the most part, this it's weird. The end result of this is good for boxing, good for the welterweight division, good for Keith Thurman. But the fight didn't end up playing out to its potential in terms of both competitiveness or just fun watch, all action affair. And that's because Thurman's close enough to being the guy he was in his prime. And that's a great development to come out of here. And it wasn't without at least us seeing some form of adversity to see what would happen. Would it be a full-on implosion like the Josecito Lopez scare in 2019? Or would it just be what had become a consistent trend in Keith Thurman's career, which is vulnerability to the body? Some people just implode, there's levels to the implosion, but some people just can't take it to the body. Of course, everyone seems to hate it to the body, rightfully so, but some guys more vulnerable than others. And it's like, even I didn't really grab onto that potential narrative like I maybe even should have ahead of this one. I knew the fears of Thurman imploding by getting caught, by maybe gassing out, by trying a little bit too hard early in the fight, but he really has been hurt to the body a consistent amount of times throughout his career. I thought the Fox broadcast, led by Sean Porter on the announcer desk back with Kate Abdo above the arena, did an incredible job with a little illustrative video package showing, oh yeah, Luis Collazo hurt Thurman back in the day there. And oh yeah, I mean, we know Manny hurt him late in their close fight again to the body. And oh, remember that time Thurman or Porter went big on Thurman to the body. And oh, Danny Garcia did hit that big shot late, which kind of caused Thurman to pull back in the other direction. I mean, it's happened somewhat consistently, but in this case, round 9, which was a big round for Thurman up to that point. And here's why this potential momentum swing round was interesting. Thurman's in complete control of this fight in round 9, and he's starting to step on the gas and feel a little bit of swagger and a little bit of confidence to say, okay, I got enough in the tank to go for a finish. I'm hurting him with almost everything I'm touching with. Excuse me. Round 8 is this pivotal round I'm describing. And, I might have a chance here for the knockout. And just as Keith seemed to be stepping up his pace to go for that, let's give Mario Barrios credit. He had his big moment, and that was a left hook to the body. Thurman clearly hurt. But even though Thurman showed potential, implosive ability, or at least showed vulnerability, he bent but never broke. And that's the key in the end, because he spit out his own mouthpiece into his own glove to give him. It's such an unorthodox move at the elite level. It's almost like the announce team was almost trying to like rip him without ripping him, because you just don't see it, but it worked. He spits it out into his glove, covers up, seems to just get enough breath back to not have an issue. But I like that we at least got to see him in a little bit of issue, because look, you go in there against the type of fighters he now puts himself in position to fight, meaning Keith Thurman, and they're going to take you there. But Crawford's going to take you there. Earl Spence Jr. is going to take you to those points of no return. So it was good to see Thurman at 33, given the layoff, pass that test and not be stung by it the following round. Thurman going the distance dominantly, you could make a case, and I think Joe Goosen sniffed at it on the broadcast, of did he do enough? Should he have tried to step in, considering he bloodies Barrios's nose in the 4th round, and then by the 8th round, 9th round, when this sort of craziness happened, suddenly Barrios is cut in the left eye as well. His nose is grotesquely swollen by the post-fight interview time. So could Thurman have stepped it up, and would you have liked to have seen him finish Barrios in this case? Yes, you would have. That would have been the storyline, being, oh crap, Keith Thurman is completely back. One time Thurman's back. The guy who, credit to the great performance against Pacquiao, and it came in the same year that he had a suspect performance against Josecito Lopez. But 2017 was the last time we saw the real prime, completely well-rounded, but dangerous and smart Keith Thurman. And if he would have stopped Barrios here, you could talk yourself into that. So instead, it's still dominant, one-sided, and it's smart, because there is, Thurman did say afterwards, yeah, I was a little bit rusty. And the thing I was missing, he claimed afterwards, and I like this sort of instant self-analysis in a lot of ways, to be his harshest critic, as he said, I didn't have that explosion to just go after it in the big spots late. And he goes, I can get that back in the gym. I will get that back. You're going to see that the next fight. So you love hearing that out of Thurman. I think he still can get pretty damn close back to that 2017 version. He wasn't tonight. And some of that, obviously, you're just never going to get back. He's 33 now, but he did not take a ton of damage. He was off, he fought twice in the last 5 years in the prime portion of his absolute prime. There's your prime, but then there's your absolute prime. And he spent most of that, injured and with legitimate surgeries to hands and hips and knees. And I mean, yeah, I missed a body part or two there, Ezekiel. But you get the point. Like, he was legitimately banged up, but didn't take on a ton of damage from there. And to see him come in, which was a largely underreported story in Friday's weigh-in, Thurman came in at 145 and a quarter pounds. So for being off that long, he didn't struggle to make 147. He did it the right way. And again, credit to Shawn Porter, who had a great night at the broadcast with that wild DSG multicolor suit he had on. But he nailed a lot of this ahead of time. And it's just my 2 cents, but I don't know why Fox isn't having Shawn Porter call the fights at this level. I mean, he's great, above the arena doing sort of the studio gig at the table, but he's even better calling fights. And right now we have a lot of an elite group across the board of ex-fighters calling fights that are pretty damn good at it, from Sergio Mora at DAZN to both Andre Ward and Tim Bradley Jr. at ESPN. Obviously, Paulie Malignaggi was probably the best for a long time, and he's not with Showtime anymore and not currently in that spot, but Abner Maris doing a great job, and Raul Marquez, my buddy on Showbox as well. But I think Shawn Porter might be the best in the game right now at this job. And they aren't really utilizing there. I used to work with him. I have that relationship and that chemistry, but he's great in very subtle ways that you have to be a broadcast nerd to understand. He's great. He's giving. He's great at this job. And I thought he nailed a lot tonight, but this isn't about him. It's about Thurman. Can he get back? How close then can he get back to that prime 2017 again? I think he at least identified the stamina issue, which there's only, it was going to come into play in some point just when you're off for 30 months. And considering we saw him beat that minor test with that body punch in round 8, and considering he was honest about his own limitations here and the short turnaround, if he stays at this level of championship shape, he's going to be a problem. Now, the question then becomes, let's really fine tune it. How much of a problem? And even Brian Kenny on the Fox broadcast kind of debated this. It's like, it's one thing to compete against the Spences and Crawfords and, fill out that B-side commercially and go in there and, have a competitive fight for as long as you can. And obviously it's another thing to win it or to be a threat to win it. And, with his power and obviously his ability to box, he's always going to be a threat to win it. But I think he has a chance to come into, whether it's next and whether it comes against Terrence Crawford, which would be the logical best step for both, considering Spence and Ugas are going to fight. I think in April is the targeted rumor date for 3 of the 4 welterweight titles. Crawford has the other one. Could you go Keith Thurman with Boots Ennis next? If you overpaid him to convince him to take on somebody as dangerous as Ennis, it'd be a heck of a pay-per-view right there. And it almost, if you're PBC, you almost might be cashing Thurman out where he's really, at least at the highest level, where he's really the most valuable to them matchmaking commercially, is to be the B-side against Spence. And whether that comes in the semifinals before finding out who the best welterweight in the world is, or whether it comes in the finals. And we're getting closer to that tournament being no holes to happening if Terrence Crawford signs with the PBC, which you look at the landscape, I think eventually he will. I just think he will in the end, because Terrence Crawford has been held back from the biggest welterweight names for so long. You got a taste of it with Shawn Porter, and he stopped him, and he looked fan-freaking-tastic. You're not going to get paid what you did by Top Rank, because they overpaid to keep him happy. If he can take less, I think he can look at and go, okay, if I go to the PBC, I'm fighting Spence. I'm fighting Ugas. I'm fighting Thurman. Who knows? Maybe Manny comes out of retirement. I'm fighting him. I'm getting the career defining fights, both financially and legacy historic. And I know sometimes Bud postures that, none of this matters to him and he'll go retire and it's fine. He doesn't care if he fights another tough guy or not, but he can't be that good and that nasty without caring a lot about his legacy as well. And that makes the most sense. That would be the best case scenario. Keith Thurman versus Terrence Crawford next. And I mean, if Thurman had a way of winning it, then him going up against Spence, if Spence beats Ugas, is the dream scenario for the PBC in most cases. But Thurman, did he show enough tonight to give me confidence that he can actually beat Spence or Crawford? That's the question. That's the question right there. And he's got it all, but Keith, to be, hypercritical in the biggest moments certainly since the Porter win, And again, you can always trace it back to the second half of the Danny Garcia fight. Did he taste the power and say, I don't want this anymore. I want to box more. Well, the thing is about how he's rounded out his game and became an elite boxer is he needs that. He needs that to compete against the Crawfords or the Spences. But he's going to need the power and the old legacy of his nickname one time if he's actually going to win that. So is he physically capable of upsetting them? Well, both yes, obviously, but also yes, given what he's got there. But if he can get more offensive, and what I mean is not just offensive when he's in the advantageous position, but offensive to where you're risking, taking a big shot. And he got too safe at that key hurdle, at the key midpoint in his career against Danny Garcia, right? Like, maybe the mountaintop point of his career. He got a little too safe. Still won that fight. He was a little too safe against Pacquiao in a close fight in which he rallied and had big moments, and it looked like it could be anybody's fight. He says he's learned his lesson from the Pacquiao fights, but the talk is going to be cheap until we see it in the ring. And he'll hit a point against a Spencer or Crawford that all these other guys hit, that Sean Porter hit against Terrence Crawford, and his dad, was like, no, enough. That's the point of no return. And can Thurman fight through that? Can he rely on his power to fight through that? I'd say the odds are against that, but it's possible. And at least this experiment tonight, this comeback fight against a guy who was, dangerous and game enough to maybe give him an issue if there were issues, but if not, no. That's kind of what you want to talk about coming out of that for Keith Thurman. And all in all, he still got it. The crispness, the combinations, the combinations are just beautiful. And he mixes in body shots, and he doesn't get hit a lot. And you get hit a bit. But when he's in there with somebody who can hurt him, he plays it a little safer, a little bit tighter, and he's got all the tools. He just hasn't shown that next level dynamicism, dymatism. What word? What, Professor Luke Thomas? What word should I be going with here? That sizzle on top of that steak. Both Bud and Spence, they're dripping sizzle, right? They're living in that part of it. We got theater though. We're gonna have future theater, and Jerron Booncennis is gonna play a big part in the welterweight division. Is always the sexy money division, and it always replenishes itself. And you saw the graphic during the pay-per-view tonight on the screen of the top 10 welterweights for both Joe Goossen and Sean Porter, and they were ranking them. And you got the guards. You got that guard whose time is now, Spence and Crawford. You've got a couple of the guys like Thurman, whose time, was, but are still trying. And boy, do you have a fun group of guys who have necks, from Virgil Ortiz in Golden Boy, who's 18-0 with 18 KOs on the Golden Boy side and just goes for it. Or is it Jerron Booncennis, who, damn, he is a problem for this division. And, there's some fun players in the back end of the top 10 as well, who are coming, Rajab Butayev, who are kind of coming, and they're going to be a tough out for somebody. So I think Pacquiao's coming back too, but we know that already. Big win for Keith Thurman on this night. Mario Barrios is he was almost happy to have lost and just at least fought tough. And it's what he said afterwards. My team and I are happy with this, and I think that was the gamble they took. We might lose this. The odds are against us, but can we, like the Tank Davis fight, just continue to make a name for ourselves? He's only 26, but he, to win these elite fights, he's got to give himself of himself. And he's willing to do that, but he wasn't willing to do that in this fight. And was that just because Thurman's power was constantly humbling him? Well, Barrios was knocked around, a bunch of times in the first half of this fight. 4 out of 6 rounds, he got sort of wobbled. So the power disciplined him. This isn't a good physical matchup for him, although he's tall enough for this division, at a sort of a freak height there of 5'11" and a half. But, he doesn't have the body size and the durability to fight in the trenches in this division against the bigger guys. So I'm not saying this division isn't for him. He can put on some more on his frame and sort of alter his game and begin to adjust it. But I think he'll enjoy notoriety and he'll get opportunities from this. And if that was the goal, then he succeeded. But he was not able to enter the realm of this being a competitive fight in the end. And the score showed that. And it was, it reached close competitivity. Where's call Merriam and Webster? Get them bitches in here. I'm restaking my claim to this game. It reached that when Thurman was hurt, obviously in round 8, but it didn't really reach it again. And there we go. So hooray for the welterweight division. This one felt like a good one for Keith's story, for the story of the big fights to make at welterweight coming up. And it goes down like that. Please like and subscribe if you like this. Of course, Luke Thomas on this same night, you can go check out on youtube.com/morning combat, gave a recap of the UFC fight night from Las Vegas and that middleweight main event between Sean Strickland going in there against Jack the Ripper. The Jack, what is his nickname? Yeah. All right, I'll figure that out later. It's BC. I'm wrapping up. I'm rambling, but I'm wrapping up. Luke Thomas hitting you up UFC, BC on the box. We'll be back Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern right here. Thank you. We out.